Thank you so much for volunteering for the Galaxy this year. I wish that I could be there in person at your training session, but my family and I are traveling back from a vacation today. And so Lindsay was kind enough, along with the church's staff, to videotape this talk. And I just wanted to let you all know that I've been working with children for 25 years, either as a coach or a camp counselor or a Sunday school teacher. And through those years of experience with children, I've learned a lot about how to communicate with them. And I wanted to impart some of that experience and wisdom to you all today. When I learned to coach basketball, I took a training session with a guy named John Herndon, who had coached at the highest levels of college basketball. In fact, he tutored international teams that were getting ready for the Olympics. And he once hosted a coaching clinic for novice coaches. And his technique was, he said, when you become a coach, you're going to learn to bake a cake of coaching. But my job is to give you some raisins, and I'm going to throw these raisins out, and you decide which of those raisins you're going to put on your cake. That's what I'm going to do for you all today. I'm going to throw you a lot of different suggestions, and you pick which of these you like, which you feel comfortable with, which of these you want to use. The first thing that I want to talk with you all today about is, why do we do this? Why are we here for the Galaxy kids? What is the purpose of what we're talking about with them? Let me throw a few things out there, and you pick whichever one resonates best with you. These are each things that I've thought about recently. This may be the one place that these children are exposed to Christianity. They're certainly not getting it on TV. They're not getting it at the movie theater. They may not be getting it at school. They may not even be getting it at home. But this is the one place that they're going to get it. I once had a friend of mine, a very spiritual person, whose father was a minister. She once told me, Chris, we're only one generation away from Christianity dying out. Now that's a sobering thought, and that puts some perspective on what we're doing here. If you pay any attention to the popular media or the mainstream news, you know that we're in a culture war, or that Christianity is under attack from the left, from the right, from all over. It seems like we're living in a world where wrong is right, and right is now somehow wrong. But in this place, this is where we know that we're teaching the truth, God's truth. G.K. Chesterton noted at the end of the 19th century that when people stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing, they believe in anything. Now pause and think about that for a second. If our children don't believe in God, then they become susceptible to any belief system that's out there, any of the isms that you hear about. There are lots of societal ills and problems that we read about every day. And I'm a lawyer, so I can say this. I don't believe that the answers to our ills are more laws or politics or more government programs. I truly believe that the answers to most of the problems that we read about are in the virtues and the values that have been laid out for us thousands of years ago by God in the Bible. Because most of the problems that people face, they've been facing for generations. These are timeless. And the answers are in the virtues and the values that we teach right here in the Galaxy. They're the key to raising well-balanced, mature, good decision-making children. Another thing I heard recently, when an author of thriller books was being interviewed on the radio, he said there's three types of people in the world. There's sheep, there's wolves, and there's sheepdogs. I kind of like to think of the children as the sheep. And all of the problems and pressures that they face out there, all of the temptations in the world, those are the wolves. Our job as their teachers is to be their sheepdog, to teach them and equip them with the virtues that they can use in their entire life to fend off the wolves of temptation and pressures of the world that are out there. Another thing I thought of recently, I saw Ryan Hall, who made the Olympic team as the U.S. Olympic marathoner. He was on an interview with Mike Huckabee, and he said that his God-given gift is to run, and that when he runs, he feels like he's in worship with God and that he is pleasing to God, and that God is pleased by what he's doing, because that is the talent that he was given. I laugh because My wife tells me I can't sing. I know I can't dance. So what is my gift? What can I use to please God? I feel that it's working with children, speaking to them. And I know that you have that gift too. Just by volunteering, you're showing that you have that gift to work with children. And this, when we do that, and when we teach children and we work with children, God is pleased because he knows that we're teaching them his word and his messages. And you're using your gifts to glorify him. The way I think about it is that this place, this room, each Sunday, it's our chance to mold and shape the children of MDPC. The influence you have is huge. It matters. So let's prepare like it. It goes without saying that each of us is committed to the children of MDPC. We wouldn't be here otherwise. Now, let me start to throw you some of those raisins of how you can prepare to give an excellent talk and really get through to these children. There's a Bible verse that comes to mind. It's Jeremiah 1, 6-8. It's a bit applicable. Now, Jeremiah was really a boy, so I'm going to substitute one key word in the verses, volunteer instead of boy. And it goes like this. Jeremiah is talking to God. He says, "Ah, Lord God, truly I do not know how to speak, for I am only a volunteer. But the Lord said to me, do not say, I am only a volunteer. For you shall go to all whom I send you, and you shall speak whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you, says the Lord." Now I laugh at that one because speaking to 100 to 150 children, kindergarten to 5th grade, can be intimidating. But remember those words, do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you, says the Lord. The 3 keys to speaking to children in my mind are 1, grab their attention, 2, hold their attention, and 3, keep it simple and repeat. If you're coaching a child to learn the piano, or you're coaching them in soccer or in swimming, it's about keeping their attention and repeating and keeping it simple. All great coaches know this, and they do it in their practice plans. And so that's what we want to do when we're speaking to our children here. Now, 1 asterisk, be flexible, because you never know with children what's going to happen. You might get a question, you might get an interruption, somebody might be acting up, so you've always got to stay on your toes and be ready to change direction and remain flexible. Be willing to go back and repeat what you talked about before and stay on your main points. Now, creativity is the key to grabbing their attention. Children love creativity. Anything that's different, anything that they haven't seen before, anything that seems silly, a little bit out of the ordinary. Remember, they're at church and they might, have had to dress up in clothes that they didn't want to wear that day, but their mom or dad made them wear. And so if you can act out of the norm a little bit, it'll really grab their attention. Now, there's different ways to do this, and you can all figure out what works best for you. You can use visuals. We have 2 great screens in this room, in the Galaxy room. You can use a poster board. You can use video clips. You can download pictures from the internet that might be appropriate to the story. Maybe you're talking about something that happened at the temple, so you get a picture of the temple. All kinds of different things you can do. One of the tricks I like to use sometimes is costumes. For example, one time I dressed up like a basketball coach and told a story about something that had happened at practice that was appropriate for that day's lesson. Maybe you'll feel more comfortable dressed like a cowboy. I mean, what kid doesn't like to see a sheriff? The Bible is full of incredible characters. We even have a costume closet here from which you can gather all types of biblical appropriate costumes. This one, I portrayed Moses, and I told the creation story as if Moses had come back, traveling around from city to city on airplanes, telling the kids of today all about how God created the universe. Or maybe you just have a silly shirt and hat lying around. This one will certainly grab their attention. The reason I showed you all of those funny costumes is not to say that you have to wear a costume, but to demonstrate about the element of entertainment. Entertaining to children is part of grabbing and holding their attention. Now we have to balance that against the real goal, which is to teach and to impart the wisdom of the Bible stories, the Bible story of the week, and the virtue of the month. Now keep in mind, as the kids, when they come to the Galaxy, before you go on as the large group speaker, they will have sung songs, they will have gotten up and danced, they will have been energetic, they might have even participated in some kind of group game or activity, they may have been shouting and screaming, and so it's not going to necessarily be easy for them to come down off of that high and listen to you give a speech. And so we need to think about that as we prepare. Remember, you've got to re-grab their attention and then hold their attention long enough to teach the real lesson that you're here to give. So how do we prepare? The way I think about the lesson plan and the script is that the monthly virtue is paramount. All the lesson plans and for all the grades are linked off of that. And the Bible story for the week is critical because that's what the small groups are also going to be teaching. Once you have those two foundational elements, your creativity and what you're comfortable with comes into play. Some examples of creativity might be tell a story from real life. Kids love to hear stories. Something that's happened to you. It doesn't have to be something that you would read in a book. Something that really happened in your life. That's a story. Kids love that. Tell about something that relates from a classic fable that they know. Tell a story from modern life. Sports are great. I really enjoy sports, and there's all kinds of sports heroes out there. I once used a story about Bubba Watson hitting that curving shot to win the Masters as an example of character and how he had changed over the course of his career because he had turned to the Bible and to Christianity and become a believer in Jesus. I even dressed up like Bubba Watson, but that's because I was a big fan and couldn't help myself. Reenactments using costumes and or children from the audience or staff, Lindsay, Andrew, kids love that. They love to see a show. And reenactments of the Bible story are a great way for children to connect to the story. Role-playing, similar to a reenactment. Here's another possibility. How about a make-believe interview of a Bible character? You could call it the Galaxy Show and interview a Bible character. Again, Andrew and Lindsay would make great participants. Stories from movies or classic books. You can get pictures or clips and show them on our big screens. The point is, make it your own. Own that week. Work with Lindsay during the week to review your thoughts and plan it and refine it as you get closer to Sunday. And most importantly, pray and listen to God during the week. What happens to me is I'll read and reread the lesson plans as it's given to me by the curriculum. And then during the week, something will happen. I might be exercising, riding a bike, walking the dogs, and when it's quiet, that's when God will talk to me. And inevitably, a great idea will come. It's not my idea, it's God's idea. It's amazing what you can hear when you stop talking and listen for God's voice. Use bullets or note cards. I really find this to be important because kids can sense when you're connecting with them. If you're reading a script at a podium, they're likely to tune out. But if you're just talking from your heart and you've maybe learned and memorized your 5 or 6 bullet points, and then you just tell them the story that resonates from those bullets, then you'll really hold their attention. If you use note cards and bullet points and tell stories, then you'll really hold their attention. Because remember, kids' brains are moving at 90 miles an hour, and they're going to get bored really quickly if you're just reading to them. So I really encourage you to have your 3, 4, 5 main points, maybe put those down on a note card on one side, and on the back side, maybe the Bible verse for the week, and maybe write out your prayer at the end, and then just speak from your heart. I promise you, you'll have their attention, and you'll see it in their faces as you're looking at them, and use your eyes to connect with them, and walk around the room. Let's talk about this amazing space up here in the Galaxy room that MDPC has built and furnished. It's an amazing space. I've been to a lot of other churches, And the investment that MDPC has made in its children and in our children is truly a gift from God. First of all, the entire room is wired for sound. We have handheld microphones. I'm wearing a wireless microphone right now. Either one that you feel comfortable with. You won't have to shout when you're on the microphone. They'll all be able to hear you, and you use the voice level that you're comfortable with. Check in with Lindsay and Andrew ahead of time and get fitted with the microphone that you think will work best for you. And if you ever want to come up and practice ahead of time, I'm sure that the church will accommodate that. Another thing that's amazing about this room is that there are 2 video screens, one on either side of the stage. The screens are connected to the computer that runs all of the sound and video for the room. So, if for example, as part of your lesson, you want to use a video clip from a movie like The Incredibles or some other movie that the kids, Soul Surfer, some other movie that the kids can relate to, work with Lindsay during the week, get the clip ready. If you want to bring pictures in on a memory stick, sometimes I'll do it that morning. We'll load them up that morning, and then we can use the clicker and show them on the screen. The visual aspect will really help grab the children's attention. Props are great. There's a huge stage and space. You can use all of it, work within it. We have tables, you can get props from the prop closet to tell your story or to use a reenactment, all kinds of different things. And feel free to move around within the space. That's another way of grabbing the children's attention. If you stay just in one spot and you're reading from the podium, the children quickly realize that they don't have to pay attention because you're not moving. But if you move, their eyes have to follow you. Their ears have to follow you. So a lot of times I will move within the space and connect with them visually with my eyes, and that keeps their attention on me. Use your hands, use your arms. All of these things are cues that the children then have to follow you with their eyes, and that will help keep their attention on you and away from Sally or Joey that might be trying to nudge them or tickle them or do something. All right, at this point now, what I'm going to do is stop with all of the useful tips and points and actually give you an example, a shortened example of one of the talks that I did last year. Okay, in a short version, here's what a Sunday talk might look like. Now, notice I've got my note card ready, and the lesson this day was about Jesus' baptism. Now, it wasn't a story that really lent itself to me being in a costume or being too silly about it, but I still wanted to have an attention grabber, because the way I think about the talk is it's got 3 main parts. The beginning, where you grab the attention, the middle, where you really impart the Bible story, the Bible verse, and the lesson, and the third part, which is the wrap-up. How is it relevant to the children and their lives today? How do they use the virtue? How do we want them to really think about the virtue and use it and apply it in their lives? So, the attention grabber I came up this time was a story that went like this. You're not going to believe it, but I was down in the basement of the church, and it was dusty and dirty, and it had a lot of old books, and I had to blow the dust off them. And I found this one book, and it was amazing. It was an old scrapbook written by a guy named Mordecai Peterson. Well, it turned out he was the great grandfather of our own Dave Peterson. So when I found that out, I wanted to see what the story was all about. Let's open it and see. And so in this part, I would have my Bible verse pre-printed inside of the scrapbook to keep the illusion of the old scrapbook going. And I would read them the Bible verse. I would say, now, when all the people were baptized, and when Jesus had also been baptized and was praying, the heaven was opened, and the Holy Spirit descended upon him in bodily form like a dove. And a voice came from heaven, you are my Son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased. Now there would be 3 or 4 main points that you would want to get across about Jesus' baptism, about his baptism. And that would all be in the lesson plan. And so everything that I would say would track right from the lesson plan. would talk about how in his baptism, Jesus realized that he was the Messiah, God's anointed king. Second, that his power and glory, and second, not power and glory, but suffering and a cross, that he knew he would have to die on the cross and that he wouldn't be a worldly king. And the baptism shows us that Jesus asking for God's approval and receiving the destiny of the cross. So these are all points that I would make as I told the story about Jesus, and I told it in a way that the children could understand. So that would be the middle part. And then when you get to the end, you want to wrap it up in a way that the kids could apply to their own lives. And so for them, it's the fact that God's big story is full of all kinds of plans, and he had a plan for Jesus. And so what I would say to the kids, and at this part I would probably walk into the middle of the audience, and I would turn and I would make eye contact with one or two children, and I would say, what you need to know is that God has a plan for you. Just like God had a plan for his son Jesus, God has a plan for each and every one of you. Don't ever forget it. You each have been given gifts from God that are unique and make you special. Keep listening to God, pray to God, and trust in him. And then I would say something like, now, you all have been a wonderful audience today. Before we go to our small groups, I want us to all bow in prayer. And then I would read the prayer. And then at that point, you're done. And you turn it back to Lindsay or whoever is here on staff that day and be thankful that you did a great job. Okay, so that's just an example, a short example of a way in which I used the lesson plans and incorporated it with my own creativity to impart the lesson. Again, I want to thank you on behalf of myself and all of the parents and all of the staff of MDPC for volunteering this year to be a large group speaker. Most of the points that I've talked about, I've printed in a sheet that hopefully we've given you a copy of today. At the bottom of that sheet, I've put my phone number, my email address. If you ever want to bounce any ideas off of me, feel free. Please, I would love to help you, particularly if it's your first time this year. Another thing to keep in mind is the children love to be involved. If you want to pick one or two volunteers to help you tell the story, do so. That's a great way of keeping their attention as well. But at the end of the day, use whatever you feel led to do, whatever creative impetus that comes to you, just go with it. Be a little bit silly, get a little bit out of your comfort zone, and I promise you the children will respond. God bless.